The Galactic Council's fleet disintegrated in nuclear fire, retribution for their heinous act against humanity. 8-year-old Emily Turner, kidnapped from Earth's colony on Proxima b, had endured unspeakable torture at the hands of alien captors. Now, her father Carl Turner stood on the bridge of the ECS Vengeance, watching the destruction unfold. Humanity's relatively recent emergence onto the galactic stage had been met with suspicion and fear by the established alien civilizations. Earth's rapid technological advancements and expansionist tendencies alarmed the Galactic Council, a powerful interstellar governing body heavily influenced by the alien Kazon race. Tensions simmered for years, but the abduction of a human child crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Carl Turner, a decorated military officer, had been enjoying a quiet evening at home when the news of Emily's kidnapping reached him. The justification provided by the Council, that Emily possessed latent psychic abilities threatening galactic stability, rang hollow in the face of a father's anguish. Earth's government attempted diplomatic negotiations, but their efforts fell on deaf ears. The Council refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, their arrogance fueled by centuries of unchallenged dominance. As days turned to weeks, hope for a peaceful resolution dwindled. Then came the leaked footage that changed everything. Images of Emily, scared and in pain, circulated through human networks. Fury swept across Earth and its colonies. Calls for action grew louder, but official channels remained frustratingly silent. Driven by grief and rage, Carl Turner took matters into his own hands. Using his military connections, he gained access to Earth's most advanced warship, the ECS Vengeance. A loyal crew assembled around him, including weapons specialist John Hawkins and navigation expert Michael Chen. Their mission was unsanctioned, a fact that Earth's government publicly condemned while secretly providing covert support. As the ECS Vengeance pushed into Galactic Council space, they encountered an unexpected ally. Ceres, a rogue Kazon scientist sympathetic to humans, provided crucial intelligence on Council defenses and Emily's likely location. Armed with this information, Carl and his team formulated a daring plan to infiltrate the Council's heavily fortified space station. The rescue mission was only part of their objective. Carl Turner intended to deliver a message that the galaxy couldn't ignore. Humanity would not be victimized, and those who harmed Earth's children would face devastating consequences. As they approached the Council's defensive fleet, Weapons Officer Hawkins primed the Vengeance's experimental nuclear arsenal. Tension filled the bridge as the crew prepared for the confrontation that would determine not only Emily's fate, but humanity's standing in the galaxy. Carl Turner gripped the command chair, his voice steady as he gave the order to engage. The ECS Vengeance surged forward, ready to unleash Earth's fury upon those who dared to underestimate humanity's resolve. In the vastness of space, a father's love and a species' determination converged into a force that would reshape the galactic order. The Galactic Council was about to learn a painful lesson. Humanity would not be trifled with, and the consequences of their actions would echo across the stars. The ECS Vengeance surged through the void, its experimental engines pulsing with scarcely controlled power. As they approached Galactic Council space, the ship's sensors lit up, detecting a massive defensive fleet arrayed before them. Carl Turner's eyes hardened as he surveyed the tactical display. "Hawkins, status on our cloaking tech?" John Hawkins, hunched over his console, nodded tersely. "Ready to engage, sir, but I can't guarantee how long it'll hold against their advanced sensors." A low hum reverberated through the ship as the experimental technology activated. On the interface, the stars seemed to blur and shift as the Vengeance vanished from sight. For several tense minutes, they glided past the initial line of defense undetected. Carl allowed himself a moment of hope before Hawkins' voice cut through the silence. "Sir, we've got a problem. Their sensors have picked up an anomaly. They're dispatching scout ships to investigate." Carl's mind raced, weighing their options. "We can't risk detection this early. Hawkins, what's the status on our plasma cannons?" "Fully operational, sir, but using them would give away our position." "Not if we're precise," Carl countered. Can you disable their scouts without destroying them? Hawkins grinned, his fingers already dancing across his console. With these beauties, absolutely. As the scout ships approached, Hawkins unleashed a series of pinpoint plasma bursts. The energy beams lanced out, invisible to the naked eye but devastatingly effective. One by one, the scouts' engines sputtered and died, leaving them adrift in space. Carl nodded approvingly. Excellent work, Chen. Maintain our course to the station. As they neared their target, Michael Chen's voice rang out. Captain, I've identified a weakness in the station's shielding. There's a gap we might be able to exploit, but it'll be tight. Chen's face was grim. We'll be skimming the station's outer hull. One miscalculation and we'll be scraped off like bugs on a windshield. Carl considered the risk, then nodded. Do it. I trust your skills, Chen. The bridge crew held their breath as Chen guided the Vengeance through the shield gap. Proximity alarms blared as the massive ship threaded the needle, missing the station's hull by mere meters. Once inside the shield perimeter, Carl wasted no time. He divided his crew into 3 teams, each with a crucial role to play. I'll lead the rescue team, he announced. Hawkins, you're in charge of sabotage. Take out their weapons and comms. Chen, you'll remain here with the skeleton crew. Be ready for a quick extraction. As Carl's team made their way through the station's winding corridors, they encountered little resistance. The few Kazon guards they came across were quickly neutralized with non-lethal stun blasts. They reached the detention level, only to be met with a barrage of enemy fire. Carl's team dove for cover behind alien machinery, returning fire as they sought a way forward. Scanning the area, Carl spotted a narrow ventilation shaft. Cover me, he shouted, making a dash for the opening. As his team laid down suppressing fire, Carl squeezed into the shaft. The metal was cold against his skin as he crawled through the cramped space, driven by the sound of a child's muffled cries. He emerged into a sterile laboratory, his heart stopping as he saw Emily strapped to a medical table. Alien scientists loomed over her, their instruments poised above her small form. Rage flooded Carl's system. In a blur of motion, he incapacitated the scientists, their bodies crumpling to the floor before they could raise an alarm. Carl's hands shook as he released her restraints. I'm here, sweetheart, I've got you. Emily clung to him, her small body racked with sobs. Carl held her close, allowing himself a brief moment of relief before the harsh reality of their situation reasserted itself. Alarms blared throughout the station, shattering the relative quiet. Carl's comm crackled to life, Hawkins' voice urgent in his ear. Captain, we've been made. The virus is uploaded, but we've got minutes at best before they regain control. Carl hefted Emily in his arms. Understood. All teams fall back to the Vengeance. We're leaving. The retreat was chaos. Waves of Kazon soldiers converged on their position, forcing Carl's team to fight their way back inch by bloody inch. Hawkins and his sabotage team provided what support they could, sealing bulkheads and misdirecting enemy forces. Carl looked at his daughter, then at his embattled crew. The decision tore at him, but he knew what had to be done. Carl kissed her forehead, then passed her to his second-in-command. Get her to safety, that's an order. As Emily was rushed to the Vengeance, Carl and his remaining team took up defensive positions in the docking bay. The air grew thick with weapons fire as they fought to keep the Kazon at bay. Through a haze of smoke and plasma discharge, Carl caught a glimpse of the Vengeance's engines flaring to life. On the ship's bridge, Emily pressed her hands against the view screen, watching as her father fought against impossible odds. Carl ducked behind a fallen pillar, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. The docking bay doors began to close, the space beyond beckoning with the promise of freedom. He looked at his remaining team, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, and made his choice. Fall back to the ship, he roared, providing covering fire as his people made a mad dash for the Vengeance's open airlock. As the last of his team scrambled aboard, Carl found himself alone on the docking bay floor, Kazon forces closing in from all sides. The Vengeance hovered just beyond the rapidly narrowing bay doors, freedom tantalizingly close yet achingly far. Carl's finger tightened on the trigger of his weapon, his eyes fixed on the shrinking gap between his position and the safety of his ship. With the full might of the Galactic Council bearing down on them and the lives of his daughter and crew hanging in the balance, he prepared to make his final desperate move. Time slowed as Carl assessed his options, the thunder of approaching Kazon boots echoing through the docking bay. "Captain, we can't hold this position," shouted one of his team members, voice strained with desperation. Carl's eyebrows furrowed. He knew what had to be done. "Fall back to the ship," he ordered, raising his weapon. "I'll cover you." His team hesitated for a split second before complying, breaking from their positions and making a desperate dash for the Vengeance. Carl laid down suppressing fire, his weapon spitting plasma bolts that forced the advancing Kazon to take cover. As the last of his team scrambled aboard the ship, Carl found himself alone on the docking bay floor. Kazon forces closed in from all sides, their weapons trained on his position. The Vengeance hovered just beyond the rapidly narrowing bay doors, freedom tantalizingly close yet achingly far. Suddenly, a barrage of covering fire erupted from the Vengeance's open airlock. Hawkins stood there, his face set in unbreakable spirit as he provided Carl with the opening he needed. Carl didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted towards the ship, plasma bolts sizzling past him. A shot grazed his arm, searing through his uniform and leaving a painful burn, but he pushed through the pain. With a final burst of speed, Carl leapt across the gap between the docking bay and the Vengeance's airlock. Hawkins grabbed him, pulling him aboard just as Chen disengaged from the station. The Vengeance's engines flared to life, propelling them away from the station. Carl stumbled to the bridge, clutching his injured arm. As he entered, he saw Emily huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else, a newfound intensity that unsettled him. Before Carl could respond, Chen's voice cut through the moment. "Captain, we've got a problem. The Council fleet. They're back early. They're blocking our escape route." Carl moved to the tactical display, his heart sinking as he saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. The Vengeance, for all its advanced technology, was severely outgunned. Hawkins stepped forward, his face grim. "We have one, sir. The quantum torpedo." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The quantum torpedo was their ace in the hole, an experimental weapon developed in secret by Earth's military. It had never been tested in actual combat, and its effects were largely theoretical. Carl weighed the risks, acutely aware of the lives depending on his decision. "Do it," he finally said. "Prepare to deploy the quantum torpedo." Carl's blood ran cold at the revelation. The stakes had just been raised exponentially. They had to survive this encounter, not just for their own lives, but for the fate of humanity. "Quantum torpedo ready, sir," Hawkins reported. Then reality itself seemed to bend and twist. A localized space-time distortion blossomed from the point of impact, engulfing a significant portion of the Council fleet. Ships caught in the blast radius were torn apart or flung into different regions of space, leaving a gaping hole in the Council's defensive line. "Chen now," Carl ordered. "Take us through that gap." "Sir, the distortion field, it's expanding," Hawkins shouted. "Our FTL drive is offline. We can't outrun it." Carl made a split-second decision. "Divert all power to shields and conventional engines. We'll have to outrun it the old-fashioned way." The Vengeance shuddered as it pushed beyond its design limits. The expanding distortion field loomed behind them, threatening to engulf the ship at any moment. Suddenly Emily stood up, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. She stretched out her hands, and a shimmering energy field materialized around the ship, reinforcing its failing shields. But Emily didn't respond. Her face was a mask of concentration as she poured her newfound abilities into protecting the ship. The Vengeance raced on, the combined power of its straining engines and Emily's psychic shield keeping them just ahead of the collapsing space-time distortion. For agonizing minutes, it seemed as if they would be torn apart at any moment. Then, with a final burst of speed, they broke free of the distortion's event horizon. Behind them, the anomaly collapsed in on itself, leaving a vast, empty region of space where the Galactic Council fleet had once been. As the immediate danger passed, Emily collapsed, exhausted by her efforts. Carl rushed to her side, cradling her unconscious form. "Get the medical AI to monitor her condition," he ordered, his voice hoarse with worry. With Emily taken care of, Carl turned his attention to their situation. The Vengeance drifted in an unknown region of space, its FTL drive offline, and its conventional systems pushed to their limits. "Hawkins, I need a full assessment of our defensive capabilities," Carl said. "Chen, work on determining our location." As his crew set to work, Carl stared out at the unfamiliar stars surrounding them. They had escaped the Galactic Council, but at a tremendous cost. They were lost, their ship damaged, and they carried knowledge of a superweapon that threatened the very existence of humanity. Carl's mind raced with the challenges ahead. They needed to repair the ship, find their way back to Earth, and somehow warn humanity about the Nova catalyst. But as he looked at his battered but unbroken crew, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived impossible odds once. They would do so again. The Vengeance drifted on through the void, carrying with it the fate of humanity and the seeds of a conflict that would reshape the galaxy. The Vengeance drifted silently through the void, its systems humming at minimal capacity. Inside the dimly lit bridge, Carl Turner stood before the tactical display, his face illuminated by its soft blue glow. His arm, now bandaged, throbbed with a dull ache as he studied the unfamiliar star patterns before him. John Hawkins, his hands moving swiftly over a nearby console, responded without looking up. "Shields are at 40% capacity and slowly recharging. Weapons systems are operational but low on power. We're in no shape for another major engagement, sir." Carl nodded, then turned to Chen. "Any luck determining our location?" Michael Chen shook his head, frustration evident in his furrowed brow. "Negative, Captain. None of these star patterns match our known charts. We're in completely uncharted space." As if to underscore their predicament, a warning light flashed on Chen's console. "Sir, the FTL drive is completely offline. We're looking at weeks of repairs at best." Carl absorbed the information, his mind already formulating plans and contingencies. He was about to respond when a cry from the medical bay caught his attention. Emily's voice, filled with a mix of fear and confusion, spurred Carl into action. He rushed to the medical bay, his heart pounding. As he entered, he found Emily sitting upright on the examination table, her eyes wide and unfocused. "I'm here, sweetheart," Carl said, moving to her side. "How are you feeling?" Emily's gaze snapped to her father, a clarity settling over her features. "The Nova catalyst," she whispered. "I saw it, Dad. I know where it is." Carl exchanged a concerned glance with the medical AI's holographic interface. "What do you mean, Emily? What did you see?" As Emily described her vision, providing detailed information about the Nova catalyst's location and capabilities, Carl felt a mix of awe and worry. His daughter's latent psychic abilities, awakened by the Galactic Council's experiments, were growing stronger by the moment. "Sir," the medical AI interjected, its voice calm and clinical. "I've completed my analysis of Emily's brain activity. The changes are significant. Her neural pathways have been dramatically altered, likely due to a combination of the Council's experiments and the recent stress she's endured." Back on the bridge, Hawkins played the faint, stuttering transmission. "It's weak, sir, but it's definitely of human origin, coming from a nearby asteroid field." Carl weighed their options. They were damaged, lost, and carrying vital information about a weapon that could destroy Earth. Yet he couldn't ignore a potential call for help from fellow humans. "Chen, plot a course to the signal's origin. Hawkins, keep our systems at minimal power. We'll investigate, but cautiously." The Vengeance crept through the asteroid field, Chen's expert piloting guiding them safely through the treacherous terrain. As they approached the signal's source, a battered ship came into view, its hull scarred and pitted. After a tense moment, a haggard face appeared on the console. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the ECS Pioneer. Thank God you've come." Carl introduced himself and his ship, then listened as Martinez explained their situation. The Pioneer had stumbled upon a secret Galactic Council research facility months ago, only to be attacked and left stranded. Most of the crew was in cryostasis to conserve resources. "We'll dock and bring your crew aboard," Carl decided. "Hawkins, Chen, you're with me. We'll assess their ship and see what we can salvage. As they boarded the Pioneer, Carl was struck by the eerie silence of the vessel. Captain Martinez led them to the cryostasis chambers, where rows of pods held the sleeping crew. While Hawkins and Chen worked to integrate the Pioneer's remaining functional systems with the Vengeance, Carl and Martinez discussed their respective encounters with the Galactic Council. "We managed to grab some encrypted data before we were attacked," Martinez said, leading Carl to the Pioneer's main computer. "Our systems were too damaged to decrypt it, but maybe your ship can make sense of it." As they worked to transfer the data, Emily's voice came over Carl's comm. "Dad, I need you to come back. There's something here, something important." Carl found Emily standing before a nondescript wall panel on the Pioneer. Without a word, she pressed her hand against it, and the panel slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a strange, crystalline object that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The moment Emily touched the artifact, her eyes glowed with the same ethereal light. "Dad," she gasped, "I can see it all so clearly now. The Nova catalyst, the Council, everything." Before Carl could respond, alarms blared throughout both ships. Hawkins' voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we've got incoming. Galactic Council patrol headed right for us." As Hawkins rigged the Pioneer with explosives and Chen calculated a trajectory to draw the patrol away, Carl oversaw the transfer of the cryostasis pods and crucial equipment. The alien artifact, cradled carefully in Emily's arms, was among the last items brought aboard. With mere minutes to spare, the Vengeance disengaged from the Pioneer. Carl watched the viewscreen intently as the damaged ship drifted into the patrol's path. The moment the Council ships entered the asteroid field, he gave the order. The explosion ripped through the Pioneer, setting off a chain reaction in the surrounding asteroids. In the ensuing chaos, Chen skillfully guided the Vengeance away, cloaked by debris and electromagnetic interference. Carl nodded, a mix of pride and concern washing over him. As the Vengeance pushed onward into the unknown, he realized that their real mission was only just beginning. Carl stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his gaze fixed on the tactical display showing their makeshift rebel fleet. The Nova Catalyst facility loomed before them, a massive space station orbiting a dying star. Its multiple layers of energy shields shimmered in the faint light, while automated defense systems bristled along its surface. "All ships report in," Carl ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Carl nodded, then addressed his crew. "You all know the plan. Vex and his rebels will draw their fire. We'll breach the secondary entrance. I'll lead the strike team to the core. Any questions?" Silence met his words. Carl allowed himself a small smile. "Then let's make history." The battle began with a brilliant flash as Vex's forces engaged the facility's outer defenses. Rebel ships darted between streams of energy weapons, their own guns blazing. Several exploded in fiery balls of light, but their sacrifice allowed the Vengeance to approach the facility's blind spot undetected. "Hawkins, start the hack," Carl ordered. John Hawkins' fingers flew over his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Accessing their comm network now, sir. Uploading the fake shield lowering order now." For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a small section of the shimmering energy field flickered and vanished. Michael Chen guided the stealth shuttle through the gap with surgical precision. The small craft slipped inside, just as the shields snapped back into place. Carl led his strike team through the facility's winding corridors, Emily's voice guiding them through the neural link. "Left at the next junction, Dad. Watch out for the security team coming up on your right." As if on cue, a squad of Galactic Council guards rounded the corner. Carl reacted instantly, his stunner dropping two before they could raise their weapons. The rest of his team made short work of the remaining guards. They pushed forward, disabling security systems and leaving unconscious guards in their wake. As they neared the Nova Catalyst's core, Hawkins' voice crackled over the comm. Carl's face hardened. "Target?" "Not if we have anything to say about it," Carl growled. "Chen, get the Vengeance in position for extraction. We might need a quick exit." They had just reached the final corridor leading to the core when a new threat emerged. A squad of elite Kazon warriors stood between them and their goal, led by a tall, imposing figure in ornate Galactic Council robes. Carl's response was to charge forward, his team following close behind. The corridor erupted into chaos as both sides clashed, energy weapons discharged, filling the air with the acrid smell of ozone. Hand-to-hand combat broke out, the sound of fists meeting flesh echoing off the metal walls. The council member proved to be a formidable opponent, his strength and speed enhanced by some unknown technology. He knocked Carl's weapon aside and landed a crushing blow to his ribs. Carl staggered back, gasping for breath. "Dad!" Emily's voice rang out in his mind. Suddenly a shimmering force field sprang into existence between Carl and his attacker. The council member's next strike bounced harmlessly off the energy barrier. Carl seized the opportunity, ducking under the field and tackling his opponent. They grappled on the floor, each fighting for dominance. With a supreme effort, Carl managed to get the upper hand, pinning the council member and rendering him unconscious with a well-placed strike. With the path clear, Carl and Emily raced into the Nova Catalyst's control room. The sight that greeted them was terrifying. A swirling vortex of energy pulsed at the center of a massive machine, growing larger by the second. Carl rushed to the control panel, his fingers dancing over the unfamiliar interface. "It's no use," he muttered. "I can't stop the activation sequence." Emily stepped forward, her eyes glowing with psychic energy. "Let me try, Dad." She placed her hands on the control panel, and immediately the alien artifact they had found on the Pioneer began to resonate. Emily gasped as power surged through her, connecting her mind directly to the Nova Catalyst systems. The facility shuddered violently, nearly knocking Carl off his feet. Hawkins' panicked voice came over the comm. "Captain, the star, its gravitational field is going haywire. We've got minutes before it goes supernova." Carl looked at his daughter, still locked in communion with the Nova Catalyst. He made his decision in an instant. "Hawkins, order all ships to retreat to a safe distance. We're going to overload this thing." As Emily worked to redirect the Nova Catalyst's energy, Carl input the commands to push the system beyond its limits. Warning klaxons blared throughout the facility as the power buildup reached critical levels. But Emily remained rooted in place, her body now glowing with the same energy as the Nova Catalyst. "I can't leave yet, Dad. I have to make sure it's done." "Go, Dad," Emily said, her voice eerily calm. "I'll be right behind you, I promise." With a heavy heart, Carl turned and ran from the control room. He sprinted through the corridors, dodging falling debris as the facility began to tear itself apart. He reached the shuttle just as another violent tremor rocked the station. "Get us out of here, Chen," Carl ordered as he strapped himself in. The shuttle shot out of the disintegrating facility, racing to rendezvous with the Vengeance. As soon as they were aboard, Chen engaged the warp drive, carrying them to safety, along with the remnants of their rebel fleet. From a distance, they watched as the Nova Catalyst facility was consumed by the combined forces of its own overloading systems and the supernova. The explosion was blinding, a flash of light so intense it seemed to outshine the entire galaxy for a brief moment. As the light faded, a hush fell over the Vengeance's bridge. Carl stared at the empty space where the facility had been, his heart heavy with grief and guilt. Then Hawkins' console began to beep insistently. "Sir, I'm picking up an energy signature. It's faint, but it's definitely there." "On screen," Carl ordered, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. The view screen zoomed in on a small point of light emerging from the stellar debris. As they watched, the light drived into a bubble of pure energy. And at its center, unconscious but alive, was Emily. "Chen, bring us in close," Carl said, his voice choked with emotion. "Let's bring her home." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.